January 17th, 1991. Over the deserts of Iraq and Kuwait, the opening hours of Operation Desert Storm were unfolding. Coalition aircraft streaked across the night sky. Precision-guided bombs slammed into radar stations and command bunkers. Cruise missiles flashed across the darkness. The Iraqi military believed it understood the air war it was about to fight. They had studied the fast jets, the F-15 Eagle, the F-16 Fighting Falcon, the stealthy F-117 Nighthawk. These aircraft were fast, sophisticated, and deadly. But there was one plane the Iraqi commanders simply did not fear. A slow, ugly aircraft that flew low. An aircraft built around a massive cannon. A plane that many foreign observers had already dismissed as outdated. The Fairchild Republic A-10 Thunderbolt II. Iraqi officers reportedly mocked it during early briefings. A slow attack aircraft flying barely faster than a propeller plane against thousands of armored vehicles. They believed it would be easy prey for anti-aircraft guns and surface-to-air missiles. But what happened over the next 6 weeks would shatter that assumption. Because by the end of the war, this strange aircraft had destroyed or disabled more than 900 Iraqi tanks. Thousands of other vehicles would follow, and what happened next would turn the A-10 into one of the most feared aircraft on the battlefield. This is the story of the aircraft Iraq laughed at, until the desert battlefield was covered with burning armor. Please subscribe to our channel and join our family. The A-10 Thunderbolt II was never designed to impress anyone. First introduced into service in 1977, it had a very specific purpose: destroy tanks. During the Cold War, NATO planners feared a massive Soviet armored invasion across Western Europe. Thousands of T-72 and T-64 tanks were expected to surge through the Fulda Gap. The United States needed a weapon that could stop them. The result was the A-10, nicknamed the Warthog. Its appearance was unusual. Twin engines mounted high above the fuselage, straight wings designed for low-speed maneuvering, and a cockpit protected by a titanium armor shell known as the bathtub. But the heart of the aircraft was its weapon, the GAU-8A Avenger, a 7-barrel 30mm rotary cannon capable of firing 3,900 rounds per minute. Each depleted uranium round could punch through heavy armor. The gun alone weighed nearly 4,000 pounds. In fact, the entire aircraft had been built around it. When the trigger was pulled, the recoil was so powerful that the aircraft actually slowed in the air. But by the late 1980s, some military planners questioned whether the A-10 still had a role. Modern warfare seemed to favor faster aircraft and high-tech precision weapons. Some officials even proposed retiring the A-10 entirely. Then came August 2nd, 1990. On that day, Saddam Hussein's Iraqi army invaded Kuwait. Within hours, Iraqi armored divisions rolled across the border. The Republican Guard, Iraq's elite force, deployed thousands of tanks. Many of them were Soviet-built T-55s, T-62s, and T-72s. By the time the invasion was complete, Iraq controlled Kuwait and threatened neighboring Saudi Arabia. The United States and its allies began assembling a massive coalition force. The operation was called Desert Shield, and when war came, the A-10 would finally face the battlefield it had been designed for. Except this time, it would not be Soviet tanks in Europe. It would be Iraqi armor in the desert. By January 1991, coalition forces had assembled one of the largest air armadas since World War II. More than 2,400 aircraft stood ready. Among them were 144 A-10 Thunderbolt II aircraft, organized into several squadrons. These included units from the 23rd Tactical Fighter Wing, the 354th Tactical Fighter Wing, and the 355th Tactical Fighter Wing. Their bases were scattered across Saudi Arabia. From airfields like King Fahd International Airport and Al Juf Air Base, the Warthogs prepared for combat. Their mission was simple: destroy Iraqi armor. The Iraqi army possessed nearly 5,500 tanks. Thousands more armored vehicles supported them. And these forces were deeply entrenched in Kuwait and southern Iraq. Defensive belts stretched across the desert: minefields, trenches, bunkers, anti-aircraft guns, surface-to-air missiles. For many pilots, the A-10's mission would be among the most dangerous in the war. Unlike high-altitude bombers, the Warthog fought close to the ground, sometimes only 200 feet above the desert floor. This placed them directly inside the lethal envelope of Iraqi air defenses. ZSU-23-4 Shilka anti-aircraft guns, SA-13 Gopher missiles, SA-6 gainful surface-to-air systems, each capable of ripping apart a slow aircraft. Still, the pilots trained relentlessly. They studied satellite photos, memorized Iraqi tank formations, practiced attack runs again and again, because the A-10's effectiveness relied on precision. A pilot would dive toward a target, line up the cannon, and fire for just 2 seconds. In that brief burst, nearly 130 rounds could slam into an enemy vehicle, and if the first pass failed, they would circle back, again and again, until the target was destroyed. When the air war began on January 17th, the skies exploded with coalition aircraft. Stealth fighters struck command centers. F-15s hunted Iraqi aircraft. B-52 bombers hammered defensive positions. But soon, the Warthogs began their work, flying low across the desert, searching for armored columns. And by 1400 hours on January 18th, the first Iraqi tanks were already burning. At first, Iraqi commanders believed the A-10 posed little threat. Reports described a slow aircraft making repeated passes. They assumed anti-aircraft guns would deal with them quickly. But the reality was far different. The A-10 had been built to survive exactly this environment. The titanium armor around the cockpit could withstand 23mm cannon fire. The aircraft's redundant systems meant it could fly even after heavy damage. Hydraulics destroyed, it could still operate in manual control mode. Engines damaged, it could fly with only one. There were even cases where Warthogs returned to base with entire sections of their wings missing. One pilot later recalled seeing an aircraft land with over 300 bullet holes, still airborne, still intact. Meanwhile, the A-10's cannon proved devastating. The GAU-8 Avenger did not simply hit targets, it shredded them. The distinctive sound of its fire became infamous, a deep mechanical growl. Iraqi soldiers soon learned to recognize it instantly, and by the time they heard it, it was usually too late. During attacks on Iraqi armored formations, A-10 pilots often approached at 300 knots. They would descend toward the target, just 1,500 feet above the ground. The tank would appear in the gun sight. Then the cannon would open fire. Depleted uranium rounds punched through the top armor of tanks. Engines exploded, turrets jammed, fuel ignited. Columns of black smoke rose across the desert. But Iraqi defenses did not remain silent. Anti-aircraft guns filled the sky with tracer fire. Missiles streaked upward. On several occasions, A-10s were hit. During the war, 7 A-10 aircraft were lost to enemy fire. Several others were heavily damaged, yet the aircraft kept returning. Day after day, mission after mission. By early February, Iraqi armored units were suffering devastating losses. Entire battalions were disappearing from reconnaissance reports. But the most dramatic moment was yet to come, because in the final days of the war, Iraqi forces would attempt a massive retreat, and the A-10 would be waiting. It was February 25th, 1991. Coalition ground forces were advancing rapidly. Iraqi units began fleeing north from Kuwait. Thousands of vehicles crowded onto the main highway between Kuwait City and Basra. Tanks, armored personnel carriers, supply trucks, artillery pieces. The columns stretched for miles. Coalition aircraft soon spotted the movement, and the attack began. Among the aircraft arriving over the highway were A-10 Warthogs, flying low across the desert. One pilot later described the scene as overwhelming. Vehicles packed bumper to bumper, no place to maneuver, no place to hide. The Warthogs descended, cannons roaring. Tank after tank erupted in flames. Missiles slammed into armored vehicles. Bombs blasted the roadway apart. Within hours, the highway had become a graveyard of destroyed armor. The event would later be known as the Highway of Death. Across the battlefield, Iraqi armored units were collapsing. A-10 pilots attacked relentlessly, sometimes flying 3 or 4 missions per day. In just 6 weeks of combat, the numbers became staggering. More than 900 Iraqi tanks destroyed, over 2,000 other military vehicles eliminated, hundreds of artillery pieces neutralized. What had once seemed like an outdated aircraft had become one of the most effective weapons of the war. The Iraqi army had entered the conflict with one of the largest armored forces in the Middle East. By the end of February 1991, much of it had ceased to exist. When the ceasefire was declared on February 28, 1991, the Gulf War had lasted just 43 days. Coalition air power had shattered the Iraqi military, and the A-10 Thunderbolt II had played a critical role in that victory. During the conflict, A-10 aircraft flew over 8,000 combat sorties. Their pilots operated in some of the most dangerous conditions of the war, flying low, facing intense anti-aircraft fire. Yet their impact was undeniable. The destruction of more than 900 tanks alone made the A-10 one of the most successful tank-killing aircraft in modern history. Many pilots received commendations for their actions. Several were awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross. Their aircraft, once dismissed as obsolete, became legendary. Soldiers on the ground came to depend on the Warthog. Whenever American troops called for close air support, the sound of that cannon brought relief. And Iraqi soldiers feared it deeply. Even decades later, the aircraft continues to serve. Upgraded, modernized, still flying missions across the world. Because sometimes the simplest weapon proves the most effective. And sometimes the aircraft people laugh at becomes the one they fear the most. This was just one of countless untold stories from modern military history. Subscribe to our channel as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life.